Oh. Hello. I'll move this over here. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Welcome. Let me move this on over. Okay. Thanks for coming. Good evening. Welcome. Jen Hoskins, Global Head of Cloud Partnerships for Inception, that is NVIDIA's startup program. Thank you all for being here. I don't know if anyone else had an adventure on the way here, but it's Vegas, so there's always something. I had a flat tire this morning. That was a lot of fun. So thank you for coming. Really excited you're all here. I do a lot of these panels, moderating. I'm not a speaker, not good at that, but this is the most exciting panel, I have to say. We have 6 of the most fascinating AI startups. Really big names. I am sure you've been reading about them without a doubt. So I'm very, very excited to welcome them up. We're going to split this into 2 sessions because we have 6 speakers, which is a lot. So we'll have 3 on stage at a time, splitting it into 2 with our co-founders to start. This is the whole group. We'll have a co-founder, CEO, first section, and then we'll move into the growth strategy section for the second half. All right, so without further ado, I want to welcome up our first 3 speakers. Whatever you want. All right. First, thank you for being here. Really exciting to have you. Introduce yourselves, please. Name, company, go right ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. Dow Kila, CEO at Contextual AI, also an adjunct professor at Stanford. So what we do with Contextual AI is we started from this observation that everybody was very excited about Gen AI, but everybody, soon after they discovered Gen AI, became very frustrated because it didn't actually work for their enterprise use cases. So we knew that part of the solution to these problems would be RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And we knew that because I am one of the pioneers of RAG. I was the project lead of RAG when I was at Facebook AI Research. And so what we have built at Contextual AI is RAG 2.0, doing RAG the right way, and we have a platform for solving these problems.
I'm Manjal Shah, co-founder and CEO of Hippocratic AI. I'm a serial entrepreneur. It's actually my 4th company, so I can't get enough punishment for building a startup. But what we do is we built a generative AI model, a vertical agent specifically focused on healthcare. We did not try to build a doctor. We actually think that the right place is what we call in the scope of nursing, because nurses don't diagnose, they don't prescribe. But the world is short. Millions and millions of nurses, frankly, especially after the pandemic. And so we're focused on building that and deploying it for health systems and for payers, as well as for pharma.
Sorry. I'm Will Falcon. Thank you for having me as well. I'm the founder of Lightning AI and creator of PyTorch Lightning. Anyone who has heard of PyTorch, raise your hands. Yes, great. Who uses Lightning as well? A few of you? Okay, well, I'm going to convince you today to do that. As a platform, so Lightning AI created PyTorch Lightning, that's one. But second, we're an AI development platform, so we basically give you a set of tools that allow you to train, deploy models, monitor them, like literally everything under the sun, from running batch jobs to cleaning data to deploying them to training, etc. I don't know. I'll get into it more as well. I will plug Dawi because he was working on RAG when I was at Fair as well. And at the time, I didn't think it was like super interesting, I guess. But many years later,
me neither, honestly.
Yeah. Many years later, it shows up, and I'm like, this is what you guys are working on. So, definitely great to have him as well.
That's awesome. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's talk inspiration. We'll start with you. What inspired you to co-found Contextual AI, and how are you creating more human-centric conversational AI systems?
Yeah, so when we started the company, as I said, we saw this frustration, and we knew that we had a good solution for moving past the demo. So what we could see was that a lot of companies, they were coming up with all these interesting use cases, some of them maybe a little bit too ambitious, and then they were not able to actually solve for these use cases. So they were getting stuck at the demo, it just wasn't good enough. So we started the company because we wanted to make it possible for people to actually get to what we call the production bar. So make it good enough for actual deployment in the real world. And so, yeah, the journey of the company has really been about building a platform to enable that. So that's our RAG 2.0 technology. It is a platform that has all the enterprise-grade features that you would expect, and you can solve these problems in a matter of minutes now.
Okay, let's talk fundraising. Let's stick with you for a minute, Dow. So what have you found effective for fundraising as an AI startup in a competitive landscape? I think you're all experiencing the fundraising. You're deep in it. You're in the thick of it. So let's keep with this one.
He's way better at it than I. So I guess if there are startups in the audience, I would say just make sure that you're very different from everybody else. It sounds very easy, right? But you need to be differentiated. And I don't necessarily mean on the technology level. So there's a lot of disdain, I think, around companies that are like wrapper companies, right? It's like you're only calling somebody else's API or you're using somebody else's language model. That's totally fine. What you should care about is how you're differentiated. So if you're in a specific vertical, great example here, or if you're in a specific area, you need to make sure that you have a very good story about why you are better than everybody else. And if you have that story, then fundraising is very easy.
Differentiation, I like that. Okay. Manjal, same question. Let's talk fundraising.
Make sure you put the words Gen AI in every slide. It's a tale of two cities out there. If you're trying to raise money for anything that's not Gen AI right now, good luck. And if you're raising money for Gen AI, I mean, literally, our very first round was on a Sunday. 5 of the major VC firms came to my house and pitched me and the founders on why we should take their money. We never even pitched. We didn't even have a deck, actually, technically. And my wife and my son, who's in college, were sitting there. And my son, after that, was like, I'm going to do this startup thing. It seems really easy. I'm like, it's not always this easy. But it is something that I would say the Gen AI focus is one. I think what he said is actually correct. Make sure you differentiate well. And also reframe the conversation. I think that one of the things people are starting to get their heads around now is this realization, and I'll give you an example in healthcare. So healthcare is $4.4 trillion in total spend in the US. Software in healthcare is only $100 billion. So the whole software market, software and IT, is only $100 billion. Nurse wages is $750 billion. Nurse openings that can't be filled is another $150 billion. That means the wage market for nursing is $900 billion. You know what else is $900 billion? All of SaaS. And so for the first time, we have technology and AI that's smart enough to really go after, frankly, some of these elements that we've not been able to expand into. And even just solving the unfilled roles that we can't fill is a market that's bigger than the software market. And so I think part of it is recasting what's happening with Gen AI into not just a technology wave or an AI wave, but really a set of tools that are going to transform how we work. And the total available market's so much bigger that honestly, they can pay more valuation-wise for these companies because the exits will be bigger.
We'll get to you on fundraising in just a minute. You're deep in the thick of it as well. Manjal, let's continue with you. Super staffing. Explain what it means and its potential to transform healthcare, please.
So this is probably another thing I would say if you're fundraising to talk about this as well. But when we focused on building Hippocratic, we said first we were going to do autopilot, not co-pilots. And everybody else was doing co-pilots. This was 18 months ago. Remember Copilot this, Copilot that? And actually Copilots have struggled a bit if you look at it. And we said, no, we're going to do autopilot. Why? Because making somebody 10% more efficient, you almost never see that. I always say the coffee machine takes your 10%. The kid's soccer game takes your 10%. Like you need to get a bigger jump for the person buying your product to actually materialize the benefit. So we went with autopilot. Then we realized when you drop the cost of anything 10x, so we charge $9 an hour for our agents, and normally those same clinicians are about $90 an hour, especially $90 per hour that they're actually on the phone, right? Because they have time taking notes and they have sick days and vacation and benefits and taxes, and so it's really this big delta in that. And if you look at that element, when a cost drops that much, you don't just do the same things you did before cheaper, you do novel things you never did. And so super staffing refers to this novel idea that says, I'll give you a concrete example. We have a big payer that has a Medicare Advantage book of about 5 million patients. And in Medicare Advantage, they get paid a fixed amount per year per patient. So if the patient goes to the ER too many times, they lose money. And if they get too sick and need lots of ER or hospital time, they lose money. So They said, you know what, in the next heat wave, can you call these 200,000 out of our 5 million and do a heat stroke assessment and then send them an Uber and get them to a cooling center? And can you do that at the hottest 2 hours of the day, every single day of the heat wave? I'm like, yeah, perfect use of AI. So the idea of superstaffing is this idea that with this technology, we not only can do the things we do and fill gaps we can't staff or do them cheaper, we can do novel things that will change health outcomes, make the country healthier in ways we've never been able to do before and the math never penciled.
That's amazing. I don't know, healthcare, health tech, AI always inspires me quite a bit. That's the most fun and interesting. William, you're deep in the thick of it, like I said. Your fundraising, you just announced a round. Congratulations. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so our latest round was 50 million. So we've raised over 108 so far in total. And one of the big investors was NVIDIA, so excited to have NVIDIA on board. They're also joining our board as well, which is really cool, among other investors, including like Cisco and JP Morgan Chase and so on. So, the journey for us from a fundraising perspective has been a bit different for sure. So, the company started like January 2020, fundraised like November 2019 before all the Gen AI stuff. I was at FAIR at the time, and I had already open sourced PyTorch Lightning, and it was kind of taken off. In the grand scheme of things, the traction was very small compared to where it is today. I think at that moment we had about 60,000 downloads. Today we have over 160 million downloads, about 10 million per month, right? But at the time, 60,000 felt like a lot. And so I got emails from all these VCs being like, hey, what are you working on there? And I was, deep in my PhD. And they were like, oh, well, you should leave to start a company. And at the time, MLOps wasn't really a thing yet. People were like coming to me saying, hey, I work at this company. Can you help me train models at scale and so on? And I was like, yeah, this seems like a bigger problem. So I left Facebook and then started the company. And we raised like 3 million. That fundraise took like a week, right? And then the follow-on ones were pretty good. I would say that the number one thing that I have learned, I'm not from Silicon Valley. I'm actually from Latin America, and I'm not like an insider. I think a lot of founders are, right? I think the world splits into two categories. If you're coming from like a known place, like you have, I guess FAIR kind of counts for that now, but back then I don't think it was on people's radars that much. If you're coming from like a Stanford or something like that, and you know people in the VC world, the bar is different for you. It means you can raise money just by knowing people. If you're not coming from that, like I was, you already have to have significant traction to get that funding. You have to understand that, right? Because I don't think people understand that. So, I needed to have over 60,000 people using the thing, ton of traction, et cetera, before we even consider a seed round. Today, you can go and start. As long as you're coming from that network, you can go and pitch and get like 3 or 4 million because you're from that network, right? So you have to understand that the bar is different depending on your background. It is a bit unfair, but it is what it is. You have to prove a record. Like, yes, if I went and started a new company tomorrow, it would be different for me now because I have a track record, right? So keep that in mind when you're fundraising, and understand that some of these big rounds that are getting done are people who are already kind of in the system as well, right? But ultimately, I would say instead of spending a year fundraising, spend a year building your product, get traction, and then spend a week fundraising. It's a lot different that way.
That's great. Let's talk more about that founder journey. Actually, Dow, if you wouldn't mind talking about your experience as a founder, and then Munjal will talk about you as a multi-time founder.
My experience as a founder. You mean how I got into it? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I was always entrepreneurial in spirit. I started my first company when I was 18 in the Netherlands. It was called Brainstorm IT. I was that cousin who could make websites. So that actually grew into a thing that was pretty successful. So we had the sweepstakes for soccer tournaments. But then I went to school and decided to stop doing this and get a PhD. So I went to Cambridge. But I always wanted to start a company. But I never actually got the chance because after my PhD, FAIR was just starting. I happened to have interned with one of the founders of FAIR, and he was like, you should join us in New York. Jan LeCun is starting this amazing thing. Couldn't really say no to that. So I did that, and then it was amazing, so I couldn't leave. And then finally was ready to start a company, but then was talking to Hugging Face, where they were like, why don't you become our head of research? So I also couldn't start a company then because that was too good of an opportunity. So I think that the timing for Contextual was really just right. I think if we had done it a year earlier, nobody would have cared about what RAG even is. And Yeah, the timing was just right where everybody was frustrated. We had the solution and we knew we could do better than that solution.
Sounds like a lot of AI right now. The timing's just right, quite honestly. This is the timing. Munjal, you're multi-time success founder. Tell us about your journey.
So I did my graduate work at Stanford in AI. This was back when we called them back propagation neural networks. And I literally wrote the code to parallelize it on a 64-node Cray supercomputer myself, because there was no such code, by the way. But then I did two companies, and one we sold to Google, the other one we sold to Alibaba. And the second one to Google was a machine learning computer vision company. And then I did a healthcare company that actually was not as successful as my first two, and then I've done now Hippocratic. But I've also helped to start another 5 companies. I will tell you guys one thing, which is this kind of wave analysis that I've seen over the years. And that is that when you're looking to build a company, a lot of times you're looking for a space in the forest where some big tree has fallen down, and so there's a gap in the market, and the sunlight can now hit the ground and you can grow a new tree. So in this analogy, that's what you're looking for. But then you grow that tree and you kind of hit other people all around, right? You kind of see that, you're like, oh, I got to differentiate. Once every 5 to 7 years, it happened with the internet, it happened with mobile, it happened with SaaS, and now it's happening with generative AI. There's just a forest fire, and it burns every last big tree, and almost anything you grow will work. And now in watching this, I've also invested in 42 startups and 23 venture funds. And when I look at all my returns and all that they come, I've now come to realize, whenever you see a damn forest fire, you run as fast as you can and you start a company. And actually, and then somebody asked me in another panel I was on, I gave this analogy, like, should you not start a company in between the forest fires? And I'm actually like, yes, you should not. But we're in the middle of a forest fire. In fact, I still think we're early enough in this forest fire that there's some real opportunities to be created. The thing I worry about the most with Hippocratic, because we're out and ahead in this category, and we seem to be right place, right time, but I'm worried, I don't want to become Yahoo or Excite and lose to Google. Like, I do worry that so I think there's always an initial growth, and then there'll be a second rebound, and sometimes the rebounds end up much better, and that's where the ending winning companies come out of. So I'm being very paranoid about that, but I would just say that there's a forest fire. It just happened. It burned every last big company. People don't even want to just buy big companies' products that pivoted to Gen AI. They want Gen AI native companies. Investors want to invest in Gen AI native companies. They do not want to invest in, I took some code and I pivoted it and I made this product, because they just believe long-term those companies won't have the IP advantage to really sustain themselves if they're just taking other people's stuff and wrapping it.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, let's continue on with you, Munjal. So why focus on latency and LLMs, and how has NVIDIA technology helped address this challenge? Personal plug.
Yeah, so before I talk about that, there's one thing I do want to say. This is the other thing to try to do, is get Jensen to fall in love with your product, because it happened to us by accident. We got to demo to him. I think the Inception program is the one that set up those demos with the VCs and some of their companies. So we ended up getting to demo to him one-on-one with about 10 other companies, and he just loved it. And because of that, he put it in his keynote at GTC last year, and then we just blew up. Like, the guy literally made us. And we got a ton of interest. And then the NVIDIA team, he put it in the executive briefing center. So now every Fortune 500 CEO rolling through there got exposed to it. And then every time they want an intro, we got an intro. So people are like, wow, how'd you get so much traction? How'd you get all your leads? Like, what marketing program are you running? I'm like, my chief marketing officer is named Jensen Huang. I'm like, that's it just happened by luck. And he just really enjoyed the product. And so I think that there was, he's a very accessible person. I mean, he literally answers his own email. It's normally on Sunday nights, pro tip. I think some of you know that already. Yeah, he's not gonna appreciate that now. I just thought about that. Actually, it's Saturday nights, use Saturday. So but I think that they're able to just drive a ton of interest, because every Fortune 500 company thinking of Gen AI ends up making a stop with them at some point in the process at the senior most levels. And so the access that they can share with their companies is like I've not seen from any other partner of ours. But coming back to your other question, we're solving a different technical problem than most people. most people are looking at throughput and optimizing their systems for throughput and optimizing cost per token. We're doing voice-based conversations, and we're offsetting a very expensive clinical resource. So we don't actually need it to be very cheap. We need it to be very safe, and we need it to be very fast. And you can't feel empathy if it's too slow. You know, I always joke with people, I'm like, you know, when your girlfriend said, "I love you," and you were like, "Oh yeah, I love you too." Not the same as I love you too. Like, not the same. And so the latency actually takes away from true emotional transmission. And everybody else worked on kind of speed, you know, cost per token, and because in text search, an extra 2 seconds is not the end of the world. Really, right? Like, you know, you're getting such a better answer and you don't have to click on 5 links and you don't have to research them. Like, you're happy to wait. But in a voice conversation, latency matters. And we found the whole stack has not been optimized for latency. It's really been optimized more for throughput. Even the inference engines have not been optimized. We finally had to take an open source thing and build our own because we found so many optimizations in there that would make it faster and faster. The TTSs are not optimized for latency as much as we would have wanted. And so we've ended up realizing that there's a whole area of exploration and optimization that's more latency focused. And then NVIDIA's, you know, really, their whole team is actually working with us on multiple layers of the stack to try to optimize latency because we've realized that, and I think we called it kind of the empathy-based latency, and that's really what we're after is working together to speed things up. And this was one of the things Jensen did like, is he said, you know, when I built video cards for games, we realized that the 10 milliseconds extra of the laser on the mouse hitting it would really interrupt your ability to win in that first-person shooter. And he realized he had to optimize a bunch of different things there. And so he said, oh, with Hippocratic, you will help us figure out how in Gen AI and inference engines to optimize it for latency because everybody else is teaching us how to optimize it more for throughput.
Yeah, I think I won't speak to Jensen specifically, but I think partnering with large corporations or mid to large-sized corporations is really difficult for some startups and something that I personally experience. I have a lot of startups contacting me, and it feels like they're not always sure what questions to ask or how to get help. William, if you could talk about navigating companies like NVIDIA and large corporations, AWS, how do you navigate these companies? How do you start?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of politics you have to learn, I guess, which is, I guess if you're coming from those companies, it's not news to you, but it was for me. I think probably the first real important thing is like that set context in all the meetings that you're having, because you're going to have people joining on there that may not be, they have no clue what you're talking about or why they're there, and you've got different business units, so you kind of always have to set context from the very beginning. But it always helps to have like a very specific use case or like a tangible goal that you're going after and have executive sponsors like try to latch onto that. I think without that, things are going to fail. So especially if you're selling to enterprises, right? From a partnership perspective, I think those are harder for sure. I think NVIDIA is one of our most successful partnerships because they're also some of our earliest partners, right? So has anyone heard of Nemo, for example, all the Nemo tools? So that's built on our stack from like 2020, super early on, right? So we've been partnering with them for a very long time on doing things like this, optimizing servers, like at the kernel level, at the compiler level, at the server level, et cetera. So you have to know who the people are that you're trying to get at and have something concrete. So probably the Hippocratic example here is pretty successful, I would imagine, because you have a very tangible case. Just here's what I want to do, and it drives everyone to like align with that. If you can distill it down to that, that's great. I think most of the time it's actually really hard to do that at a big company because people have different goals that they're trying to shoot for. So say no to most things, pick the one thing you want to do, and then focus on that. That would be my suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. Dow, same question. You're on stage here with NVIDIA at AWS reInvent. How did you get here? What are you doing? What's working?
Yeah, so if you do it wrong, it's going to be a giant time sink and you get almost nothing out of it. So I think we'll basically answer the question. You have to be really focused. You need to be very opinionated about what you want to get out of the partnership. You need to choose your partnerships carefully. NVIDIA has been a great partner. So the Inception program has been fantastic. It's really about collaboration rather than trying to maybe compete in different ways. It's really, every partnership is different, and you can really feel that very early on. And sometimes you should just walk away But that's very hard to do when you're an early stage startup.
It's hard to make that determination too, when to walk away. Absolutely. All right, William, back to you. Many startups and enterprises begin their AI journey by prioritizing the development of AI infrastructure, often integrating numerous point solutions. What are the key advantages and challenges of this approach, and how can companies accelerate by focusing on products instead?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So we help a lot of startups today and big companies. And kind of the first pattern that I'm seeing, that we've seen for many years now, is people kind of build their own AI infra first. So a new startup will get funding, and then they'll sit here and build all this like optimized stuff instead of shipping the product, right? So the way that it starts is very simple. So let me raise your hands to answer this question. How many of you have built your own ML infra? Okay, I'm gonna ask it again. I have to explain what that means, right? So you went out to some cloud provider and you rented a bunch of H100s, right? So you got the machines, you got some quotas, whatever. Then you started layering in a few services here and there. You started like putting EC2, you started putting monitoring tools, you started buying a bunch of point solutions, you started stringing them together. How many of you have done that? Yeah, that's an ML platform. You don't know it yet, but you built an ML platform. And in about a year or two, you're gonna run into issues when you look at your headcount, you're gonna have 5 or 10 engineers who are managing that thing specifically. Then you're looking at your burn and you're like, well, what happened? Where's my product? And you're like, oh, but we had to build this better inference engine, or this better kernel, or this better way of doing distributed or cold starts or whatever. Well, I think I would ask you this question. If you believe that you doing that and spending time into that particular thing is going to truly separate you from your competitors, like if you can look at your competitors and say, oh, my ML infra is the thing, the reason why we're winning. If that's true, then continue doing that. For most of you, I don't think that's true. For most of you, it's because your data, right? You have unique data, you have better models, you have like a domain expertise that no one else has. That's really where you have your differentiator. So anything that's not invested into that, you're gonna be wasting time and money, right? And people don't know it until they're spending way too much time on it. There are people in this room today, I know already, that have talked to us because they said, oh, we're gonna do this on our own. Then a year later, they came back and they're like, oh my God, I'm spending way too much money on this. We need help, right? It would be like building your own Slack today. Like how many of you would build your own Slack? Probably no one, right? Well, that's kind of what we solved, right? It's give you the platform out of the box so you can focus on the product, not necessarily the thing. It gets really expensive. It's the management, what happens when those people quit. There's like a whole, there are a lot of things that go into that you won't necessarily see up front. Yeah.
Awesome, yeah, thank you. Munjal, you're seeing crazy growth at Hippocratic. You're citing health systems every single week. What is driving that? How do you see growth?
I mean, I think it's just a product market fit. I mean, look, we entered an era where everybody is short clinical staff, and we're offering effectively infinite supply of clinical staff. And so combine that with the excitement around Gen AI, we are just seeing people be like, I want to try it. Nobody's like, oh, I don't know. They're like, yes, you know what? I have such a problem. I want to try this. I'll try it right now. I think the other part is we realized that our business was a dual mandate, meaning it wasn't just enough to make them more efficient. We had to ensure it would be safe, because even a conversation with a nurse can kill a patient. If you say, can I take ibuprofen? And the nurse says, sure, you can, just don't take too much. It turns out if you have chronic kidney disease stage 3 or 4, you can't take ibuprofen. It'll kill you. And so we had to build in all of these safety checks. And we did that. You can read on our website. We have this constellation architecture, we call it, where it's a multi-agent architecture where there's a primary agent and 19 supervisor agents. And the supervisors are looking for overdose statements. They're looking for these condition-specific disallowed over-the-counter medications. They're looking for drug stoppage instructions, like all these things that are deeply clinical, but that actually can hurt patients. And so we just came to them. I mean, look at even how we presented the company. We called it Hippocratic after the Hippocratic Oath. We made the tagline, do no harm. We decided that there was one other variable other than efficiency gain that we were going to focus the company on, and then just put everything against it. We spent $10 million on having real US nurses test the product even before we put it in front of the first patient and talk to it and mark all the errors, and then we fixed those errors, and then we put out another version, they marked those errors, and we did that for 18 months now. I think we're at 260,000 conversations before it even saw one patient. We've now talked to about 160,000 patients, so now it's kind of out in the wild scaling. But I think that this is what we've seen is the product succeeds because the demand is there, but there's usually one other criteria you have to have, and in our case, it was really safe to you.
Absolutely. Okay, last couple of minutes before we switch to our next panel members. So we'll do a couple of rapid fires, short sentences, a few words. What is your one sentence pitch to an investor, William?
One sentence pitch to an investor. Yeah, wow, okay. So Lightning's an AI development platform, kind of brings all the tools together into a single place so that you can build AI quickly, not worry about infrastructure, not worry about anything else that's other than the data, the models, and your team itself, I guess. I don't know.
Pretty good.
AI agent that focuses on the scope of nursing.
Ooh, very succinct. I like it. Winner. Okay.
Production-grade enterprise AI from the pioneers of RAG, powered by RAG 2.0.
Not bad. All right. I'd fund all of you. It's pretty good. All right. What is one AI myth you'd like to debunk?
AI.
That we're plateauing.
Just one.
There's this narrative out there now that AI is plateauing. I think that's wrong. But this is rapid fire, so I can't explain why.
Fair enough.
If you know what I've trained on, my model is safe, or you know about something about the safety of the model, it's total crap. There's PubMed GPT, trained only on PubMed, still make stuff up. Just because you have, garbage in might be garbage out, but good stuff in might still be garbage out. Like, the only way to know if it's safe is to test output, but output testing is way bigger than input testing. Sorry, that was more than a sentence.
I would say that it's a lot easier to productize than you think. It's just you don't have the right tools, right? It's like having 5G without a smartphone. Like, you can't really do anything with it.
Okay. Last question. What's the best advice you've ever received as a founder?
Hire slow, fire fast.
Eat the appetizers when they're being passed around, not when you're hungry.
Be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Always good. All right. Last thing. What is your call to action? What do you want people here at reInvent to do? William, start with you.
Go to lightning.ai right now. Sign up. It's free tier. Get up there. I'm not going to name all the tools that this will replace, but it'll replace like 18 different point solutions for you. And it's a lot cheaper as well.
Take his stuff and go start a company if you even have any interest in it, because we just had a forest fire.
If you need any software to build applications to address the forest fire, then come talk to me.
That was perfect. All right, let's thank our panel members, our first round. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I want to welcome up our second panel. If our three panel members could please join me on stage. Let's welcome them up. All right. Thank you for joining. I might sit for this one. We have a nice transition of people coming in, too. All right, if you could start by introducing yourselves, your role, and your company, please.
Yeah, hi. Hey, everyone, I'm So-Young. I'm one of the co-founders of 12 Labs, where I head up go-to-market. And 12 Labs is a company that builds foundation models for multimodal video understanding. So these are large pre-trained AI models that can contextually comprehend everything that is inside a video, put all of those contexts together, and enable intelligent downstream tasks, such as semantically searching across your videos, automatically summarizing, prompting to retrieve responses, so video RAG, highlight chapterization, and so on. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
I love what you're doing. I saw you at IBC. Hi, I'm Vered. I'm Chief Strategic AI Partnerships at BRI. BRI is a platform for generative media and for builders. So basically, we're not an application. You can generate images as a consumer. But if you're building applications, products, solutions that require generative media, being visuals, video, music, audio, this is where you need to go.
I'm Kev. I'm the strategy guy at Ryder, the leading generative AI company for enterprises. We serve 40% of the Fortune 500, and I'm a serial operator, having done about 5 different technology innovation startups that included mobile ads, cloud storage, visual collaboration, and now Ryder doing generative AI.
That's great, thank you. Let's continue with you, Kevin. What are you doing with NVIDIA? How are you using our tech? How are you partnering with us? How are we helping?
Everything. We try to take everything from NVIDIA that they'll give us. So we've been part of the Inception program from day one. You know, what's different about Ryder is that we're a full stack solution. So we have everything from building our own models to the go-to-market to the RAG to everything around the sun. And we've been using NVIDIA's team. They're like in our Slack channels, right? So like we're constantly with the team. They're helping us train our models. We used, AWS HyperPod using, NVIDIA's H100s to train, do inference, do all that stuff. So we work with you guys on the technology side, but as well as the go-to-market side. So everything across the sun, we are not shy about asking for help from NVIDIA at any point in time.
Which makes sense from the strategy guy. Yeah, that's great. Barrett?
Yeah, so similar. So we are a developers platform, but for enterprises mainly, because we solved all the challenges for enterprises in adopting Gen AI technology, mainly being trust and safety. The way we did this was that the first technology we ever developed was attribution technology. So for every synthetic assets that coming out of any of our media models, we can trace it back to the original assets within our training catalog that impacted the most specific synthetic assets, and we also share the revenue with the ancestors. So this attribution technology is what actually enabled us to collaborate and partner with some of the world's greatest media companies, including Getty Images, Envato, Deposit Photos, Alameda Financial Press Association, Media Group, and many, many more. And we only train our models on licensed content, so we never engage in scraping of the internet. Working with enterprises, obviously, being vetted by NVIDIA carries a lot of weight. NVIDIA has very broad overview of the market, and opening the door to C-level within this organization has been really crucial to our go-to-market. A lot of our customers, Fox, Warner Brothers, are actually customers that were introduced to us by NVIDIA because NVIDIA recognized that we solve a gap in the market, especially if you are an enterprise where content is your product. You're very sensitive to all issues of copyright infringement. And this is where the BRIA solution is actually something that you would absolutely require in order to engage with this technology.
Yeah.
12 Labs. We train our models on NVIDIA GPUs. We serve our models on NVIDIA GPUs, so inference. And while we focus on building state-of-the-art models, the most powerful and useful models for video understanding, we also want to make sure our models are accessible and running at the highest efficiency possible. So a model, being able to control model size and also be able to serve our models really efficiently for customers who have massive scale of data that they're kind of running our models against is also very crucial. So the other thing that we are also working very closely with NVIDIA and also Inception on is go-to-market and partnerships. And soon our models will also be available as NIM microservices.
That's great. We'll get back to that one. What challenges did you face in developing AI for video search specifically?
So we started the company in like 4 years ago, back when not too many people knew or understood, especially enterprise, like foundation models or especially multimodal models. So what that meant for us, because we had started out trying to build a general purpose model that can contextually understand any video, whether it be a sports game, film, animation, maybe it's your car dash cam footage, and be able to create a generalized understanding of it to be able to power your intelligent tasks. That can go in so many different directions. So for 12 Labs, I think, and video understanding, because video is so diverse, it's everything around us is basically video. It's how do you focus? That was the biggest problem, challenge that I would say. We would any startup, but especially like we've faced. And for 12 Labs, I think it was just being laser focused on let's make sure that we are serving the most useful, but also the most powerful models specifically for multimodal and video, and making sure that's also like accessible. So it's being able to run at scale, being able to, I think latency was something that was brought up, so being able to open up new use cases by reducing latency, and now we're working on things that like streaming in real time as well, but making sure we're really deeply understanding all of the specific use cases that customers of different verticals, industries have around video, and we're building the model and the product and also the API experience to be able to power their internal workflows as well as the products.
That's great. Okay, let's look at Bria, continuing the creative journey. How is Bria revolutionizing visual content creation with AI, and how has Inception supported your journey?
Yeah, so I think the challenge with generative AI when it comes to media industry, media entertainment industry, is that the quality and the fidelity that professional creatives expect is very different from what consumer markets can accept. And this requires actually a dialogue between engineering and creative people. And it's not as smooth as you could probably expect. So for these teams, for creative teams to be able to effectively communicate their requirements to engineering teams, we actually created a team that is composed of creative people in our company that can help the creative teams from our customers' organization to communicate better with customers' engineering teams, actually, because they are going to deploy our models and control nets and adapters in order to facilitate pipelines that are going to cater to their creative teams eventually. So that was one of the things that was very important to actually reach success for these specific audiences. And the other thing was that it's always, and I think previous panel also touched this, with Gen AI, 18 months ago, people, especially in enterprise space, were thinking, okay, it's going to maybe be closely linked to automation and gaining more efficiencies on production pipelines and just productivity. But I think the more advanced models especially, but also more and more generally, are now realizing that this technology is actually going to dramatically change a lot of the industries. Not just introducing more efficiencies, but actually changing fundamental things about how people work in these industries, what they're even selling, what is my product. So content, for example, is unlikely to be something that we will all consume in a very centralized way like we consume today. It will probably be very hyper-personalized. People talk about this for years, but I think now finally the technology is there to actually achieve this. I can give you an example from one of our customers. It's the second largest marketing agency in Japan, catering mainly to the automotive industry in Japan, which is obviously a very large one. And they were previously, in the old world, they were selling, they were actually conducting this really amazing production. They would select locations and photo shoot these cars in all different scenarios, but at the end of the day, you would still get this SUV in specific scene, which might not be relevant to a lot of their customers globally, right? So, but it was very expensive. And the business model was that they were selling these images. One image, it could be $10,000, but still, this was the product. Now with Gen AI, what we're doing to them is to completely automate this pipeline, and actually these cars now can be depicted in many different scenarios, talking better and more ideally to their customers, localizing this for them. I can tell you we don't get much snow in Tel Aviv, so putting this SUV in the Swiss Alps would probably make less sense. But if you can put it in the sand, in the desert, yeah, that resonates with our local audience, for example. So now you can do all of this, and now what are you selling? You're not selling this image because this image, it's incremental, it's nothing to generate this, right? So now you're selling Toyota a platform that is going to generate unlimited volume of images for marketing purposes that are personalized for their very highly segmented audiences, right? So this is change management. This is why this organization now need to understand what is their business, what they're selling now. And this requires a lot of adaptation, and this is working with NVIDIA as being really pivotal to helping them go through this change.
That's amazing, thank you. Continue on working with partners, working with NVIDIA. I think a lot of startups come to us and ask us questions like, how do you work with big companies? How do you work with NVIDIA? Kevin, let's talk about Writer. How are you on stage today? Again, how do you partner with us? How do you partner with large companies?
Yeah, I think that there's probably two misconceptions, and we have a pretty humorous but also very painful story around the first one. It's not about NVIDIA, but the first one is around just ask. Like, typically we'll ask for whatever we want under the sun, and we'll get maybe it answered half the time, but that's pretty good. So, whenever the best thing to do is do that. It's also, what's really interesting is sometimes you expect that larger companies move slower, but they actually move faster because they have like 100 times the number of people, maybe thousands of times. So, we typically will try to move quickly, but it's actually pretty interesting that NVIDIA moves really fast. So we're able to get a lot of things done. So that's the first one. The second piece that was kind of an interesting story for us was the tale of basically 2 years. So we were actually stuck in the wrong account with AWS in a different region. So basically every time we reached out to AWS, they're like, oh, you're not in the North America region, so therefore we don't have anybody to talk to you. So I was basically filling out forms, like the help forms, being like, hey, can somebody at AWS come talk to us? And the response was always like, no, nobody can talk to you. You don't have an account manager, you're in the wrong region. So the big thing that really changed it for us was just like, if you connect with the right people, they can help you get to the right place. So within a year, or like probably within like 2 months, actually, when we got in touch with the right folks at AWS, our tides completely turned. We got invited as a special guest to last year's reInvent, and we're able to do a bunch of things. And now this year we're doing a bunch of stuff with both NVIDIA and AWS. So I think it's more about just asking all the time and actually expecting that they're going to move a lot faster than you can. And the second is just also just leveraging the people that you know. And also online forms don't work. That's 3 pieces of advice, really.
Absolutely. Okay, Vered, let's continue on with this. What's the secret sauce? How are you? Is it the people asking? What's working?
So, don't be coy, obviously. But at the same time, I think large organizations tend to be structured around verticals and industries. And I know that, if we are a platform for developers, and we cater, to be honest, to many different industries. So we cater to marketing, creative platforms, CPGs, retail. We discussed media and entertainment, gaming. So these are different verticals, and larger organizations like NVIDIA, like AWS, will have different people actually looking after these different markets. So even if you are going to directly, when you're selling directly to these markets, or when you're going after these customers yourself, you will, be less focused. Perhaps you take a less focused approach. Perhaps when you're going through partners, make sure that you start with one industry first and expand from there. And the currency that is most important working with larger partners like NVIDIA and AWS is case studies. So actually making their customers happy and satisfied and delighted. This is what they want to see. So succeed once, amplify this, make sure that everyone learn about this, and see how this can be replicated with other customers. This will actually yield a lot of inbound from other accounts.
Yeah.
Same question.
Same question.
So I think for 12 Labs, I largely agree on the case studies. I would say if you can get customers to advocate for what you do and why it's valuable for their organization with partners, that's the most valuable push that you can get to be able to solidify, whether it's a product partnership, co-sell, or go-to-market partnership, to be able to get these things done. Like for us, for instance, we recently released a case study with the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. they're one of the largest Canadian sports kind of groups where they have a hockey team, they have a basketball team, soccer team. And the case study was around there's so much valuable content and footage that lives in the archives for any sports league or sports team. In this case, of course, there's such valuable content around every player and every kind of, every team that exists. So how do you actually understand that vast amount of content, and you're able to create content at scale efficiently, understand what's inside first of all, create content or highlights, and if you can do that at scale, and without having to manually have somebody painfully tag and log and kind of, go like take notes on what's actually happening while they're like scrubbing through footage. And then third, you're actually creating content at scale. Then you can actually personalize what content is pushed in front of every audience group. And that's an example of, it's a really good representation of what some of our other customers would see, and some of the product level partnerships or solution combinations of solutions that we would put together with partners. And I think it's things like that that have really kind of helped 12 Labs a lot, both with NVIDIA and AWS, and what both companies, though large, have in common is that they're incredibly customer focused. And especially for NVIDIA, I feel like it's really the next gen, like most strategic use cases for any large enterprise organization that NVIDIA will really advocate for and make happen. So if you can have a customer say, hey, this is a technology or this is a product that is going to be meaningful for our business in the next years to come, that's how you are able to kind of work together really easily.
Yeah, work backward from the customer. It's great advice. Forms don't work, also good advice. Focus on a vertical. I completely agree. I think a lot of startups go really broad, and it makes for a difficult story.
I think I have another advice for the audience here. If you are in a space that is really innovative, that is pushing the boundaries of technology, then you're probably going to collaborate with this NVIDIA, for example, on their product that are also very innovative, right? For example, our generative media capabilities, whether it's image generation or editing or what have you, all of this can be consumed whether through APIs, but also you can also take the models complete with source code and weights and everything and continue your own development. So this actually interacts with two different platforms of NVIDIA. And these companies, when it comes to the API, we're running in our models or our platform on NVCF, which is formerly Picasso, if you're familiar with. And when it comes to our models, they are available on the NIM, okay? NVIDIA NIM. So what's important to understand is that these giants also have their products, and these products are babies of someone, okay, in these organizations. And they want actually you, especially if you are running a company that is doing something that is unique, that not many group out there are doing this. Your experience working with their product and their environment and your feedback to them is actually going to drive forward these products. So be very open and share with them your feedback and help them put in the market better and better products. So this is what we're actively doing with them. Not many groups train these large models in the visual space, in the media space out there. So working with them on their environment, making sure that they constantly improve their products that relate to this space is something that has been really appreciated by them.
Yeah, I would second that. That's a little known and not often exploited way in is not exploited, but used way into companies like NVIDIA is focusing on product, and feedback is really important, and we pay attention. I'd say that's also true of any large corporation, so it's a good way to get in. All right, let's talk about strategy. How do you identify and prioritize strategic opportunities in a fast-moving industry? Strategy guy, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing is like companies, particularly how fast things are going, there'll be companies that will be like, hey, what's your 1-year plan? I don't think we can write like plans that are longer than a month in many cases. So really, it's just how do you quickly be able to identify what you want to do and go do it. And so there are places that'll say, hey, help me write a business plan. In this cases, we don't even write them, right? It's more like if you have a hunch, you have an idea, and you feel you have strong conviction, go out and try it. Try it for a month and see what the results are. And that's usually sort of the fastest way we really try to figure out how we learn, because you can create a doc that's like, here are my 10 priorities for the year. Most likely in a month, those 10 priorities will be different. So we typically like to just kind of pick the 1 or 2 things you want to go after and go do them and figure out in a month, look back and say that worked or didn't work. And that's been working out pretty well for us, only because, as I mentioned, things are changing so dynamic. The whole industry is so dynamic. Because things change so quickly, you can't really write this stuff up. By the time you write it, it's probably going to be different anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So for us, it was really going against the motion of the trend in the market. So everyone were doing Gen AI, obviously, when we started 5 years ago, or the pioneers of Gen AI were already there. So for example, stability, OpenAI with DALL-E, and Adobe started training Firefly. So what we did was actually look at what's there out there in the market and try to solve problems that were not even on the horizon. So understanding that there will be enterprises that safety and trust will be something that this is going to be a roadblock, so we need to solve this for them. So 5 years ago, when responsible AI was not in fashion, the term Gen AI was not even coined back then, right? So responsible AI was not something that anyone talked about. There was no regulation on the horizon. So try to think how the market would look like 5-10 years ahead. So this is what we did, and then solve this gap in the market, basically, for those enterprises, for these clients.
For us, it's been incredibly helpful to have a shared, so today 12 Labs is about 75 people as a company. So mostly research, engineering. We have about 14 folks on the go-to-market team. And the entire company, I'd say, has a very strong shared vision of where we believe 12 Labs should be in X years. If we achieve everything we hope to be, what will the product do? What will the world look like? And what will, what applications will our models be powering? And you can't get too specific with that, but it is an abstract goal. And if you have that shared vision, and then there's going to be everything that's actually happening today, which is going to be vastly different from, there are going to be very tactical things of, do we build this feature? Do we work with this customer? How do we work with this customer? And things like that. But I think at the end of the day, everything that we ask ourselves as we're prioritizing from product to marketing to sales, self-serve, is, does this help us get to that vision, or will it get us to deviate? If we are working on a certain subset of use cases, what is insight that we can draw from it, so that we can actually, are there things that we can actually bring forward from the longer term vision that we have to help the customers or kind of users that we have today that are requesting certain things. So it's a balance, but it's really like having that shared, very clear vision of where we want to be, and making sure that the day-to-day things that we do and the decisions that we are making today, at least there is some connectivity in between those two things.
That's great. Okay, we have just a couple of minutes remaining. In the last couple of minutes, if you could tell me, short answer, what is your proudest achievement as a startup? Kevin?
Oh, proudest achievement? Is to still be in business.
There we go, that's good. That's always a win.
I think for us, doubling down partnerships was really something that Vegas is the place to double down on anything, right? So this was one of the strategic decisions that we took from the beginning, and it paid off.
So, yeah.
I'll go back to what I said around our very laser-focused vision and everything we do, prioritization of video, making sure we deeply understand, even if there are 2 to 3 verticals that we are really doubling down on today, making sure we understand what all of those use cases mean, what that means for model capabilities, what that means for data, building an organization and an incredibly driven team, very motivated team that works incredibly well together, that share this vision. And for startups, like day-to-day is not easy, but at least it's fun because you're working with colleagues who are just as passionate as you are, and you know what you're working towards together.
Absolutely. I hope it's fun. It's not always fun, but when it is, it works. All right. Last couple of seconds, just give us your call to action. What do you want startups, founders to do? How do they access you? How do they find you?
Well, I would say like the networking potential at events like reInvent or GTC are great, right? It's like an opportunity for like all of us to get together and really like learn from each other. So I think it's just the networking pieces of these conferences is great. It's great to be back in person again, right? So take advantage of the fact that we are able to do this and we have a whole industry that's becoming of generative AI. So just to take advantage.
Come see us at the NVIDIA Pavilion. 1620, that's our booth. And we have a startup program, so if you're doing anything around generative media, let's talk.
Go-to-market person in me, which is if you are building video products, or if you know somebody who is building video products, if there is a large media organization, anyone who has a need to understand deeply their videos and to build use cases on top of it. We'd love to chat. Our product is available, free to use at Playground at 12. Like you can go to our website, 12labs.io, and sign up for an account. But we're also happy to chat live and learn more and see how we can help.
That's great. All right. With that, we are out of time. Let's say thank you to our startups and the panel. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience as well.